So we are learning Shmuel base, the book of Samuel 2. And the chapter that we're on is chapter 16. And we did start it, but we only got a few verses. So we're going to start again from the beginning of chapter 16. And we're dealing with the rebellion of Avshalom and how David is really in a bad state because his own son is rebelling against him, and it's really unpredictable where this, how, to what extent this is going to go. And sometimes, even if he didn't plan on, sometimes you might not plan on certain things, but then, when you get into it, you get into war, sometimes kings don't know how to stop a war. They sometimes, you sort of like letting, it becomes an animal in and of itself. And it's, it's almost like you can't control it. And so David is trying to set himself up properly. And he has his, he's got his people who are going to be pretending to be on double agents, I guess. I think that's what it's called. They're pretending to be on Avshalom's side, but yet they're really going to be spreading, sending messages to David. So here we are. David had just passed beyond the summit. We're in the verse 1 in chapter 16. David had just passed beyond the summit. Rosh means the top of the mountain, and he was on Mount Olives, Har Hazesim. And behold, Siva, I should say, in Hebrew, is the real name is Siva, Mephibosheth's servant. This is Mephibosheth's non-Jewish servant. Mephibosheth was Avshalom's grandson, and David was very kind to this Mephibosheth because Mephibosheth was really from the enemy king, the king who wanted to kill him, and that was Shaul. And David was friendly with Mephibosheth's father, and Mephibosheth's grandfather Shaul was his father-in-law. But at the same time, Shaul did want to kill his son-in-law David, and created such a animosity that that Mephibosheth was actually in hiding because he was nervous David would kill him when the war ended, when his grandfather passed away and David took over and so on. And so Mephibosheth was hiding, and David was kind to this Mephibosheth, and he seeked him out and told him that I want to show you some love and caring, and I want to do whatever I can for you. He was very kind to Mephibosheth, and he didn't want to hurt him in any shape or form. He made sure that he had a lot of sustenance and provided him with the means to have to make a good living and so on. And so Mephibosheth is this son of David's very close friend Yonasan. Now, the Mephibosheth was lame, and so David had arranged that this Siva would actually would be the aid for Mephibosheth. Now, Siva comes to David. David is, of course, in a state of, I can't say poverty, but in a state where he doesn't have his belongings. He doesn't have everything he needs because he's in a state of no man's land. He's just he's homeless, so to speak, and so he doesn't have his dresser. He doesn't have his typical needs, and they took off very fast. That they didn't have time to really bring everything they needed with them, and so Siva comes and she wants to provide all these great things. So she's Mephibosheth's servant, and Siva was in front of him with a pair of donkeys, and I don't know if I use the female term. Tziva is a man, but anyway, so he was in front of David with a pair of donkeys laden with 200 breads and 100 clusters of raisins and 100 portions of dried figs and a container of wine. And the king asked Tziva, how do you have these? You're a servant. And Tziva answered that the donkeys are for the king's household to ride upon, and the bread and the dried figs are for the youth to eat, and the wine is for the exhausted one in the desert to drink. And the king then said, and what about Mephibosheth? Where is your master's son, Mephibosheth? And Tziva said to the king, behold, he is staying in Jerusalem, for he said, today the house of Israel will restore my father's kingdom to me. And what that means is that Tziva is telling this story to David HaMelech. What is Tziva saying? Tziva is saying that Mephibosheth, my master, he's really looking to become king. And, he thinks he's siding with Avshalom. It's more or less what Tziva is saying, because Tziva is emphasizing that he's staying in Jerusalem, and he said that he's going to restore, that the house of Israel will restore his father's kingdom to him, meaning Shaul HaMelech's kingdom is going to go to him. Now, what type of craziness is that? Just because Avshalom is rebelling against David, how in the world is that going to help Tziva become? That's not going to help Tziva become king. And Mephibosheth become Mephibosheth. How is it going to help Mephibosheth just because Avshalom will win? What will that do? Avshalom is going to be king, right? So what was Tziva claiming? Now Tziva is telling us something about Mephibosheth. Now, whether it's true or not, we have yet to see. But Tziva is coming up with this story. And Tziva is saying that, Mephibosheth is joining Avshalom because he thinks he wants his father's kingdom to be restored. Yes, Ben.
I think we learned that David arranged for Tziva to take care of Mephibosheth. Him
Correct.
And his family should be taking care of him, and he gave him land to work for Mephibosheth.
Right. I mentioned that it was like he gave him sustenance, like
he did everything. He did everything for him, and Tziva was the one that really didn't want to do it. But David said, "No, you have to do it."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Correct. So, but the question really here is that why does Mephibosheth, according to this story, if it's true, what is the logic behind it? How does Mephibosheth think he's getting restored the kingdom? So the logic basically is that Avshalom is for sure going to kill his father. That's at least what this is the logic. Whether it's correct or not, it doesn't matter. This was their thoughts. So Avshalom is going to kill his father, David. Now, when Avshalom does that, what's going to happen? They're going to look at Avshalom as a murderer. Because even though his father was no good, maybe, according to their logic and according to whatever they come up with, whatever stories they blow up and claim that David wasn't good, it doesn't matter. They're still going to look at Avshalom in a bad, and they're going to look at him negatively and in a bad light. And therefore, Mephibosheth would say, well, so they're going to get rid of Avshalom, and they're going to say, you know what, let's give it back to Shaul HaMelech's grandson, Mephibosheth. So that was the logic behind this story that Tziva is claiming. Now, the real truth is the story was made up. It's not true at all. Mephibosheth did not side with Avshalom, and Mephibosheth did not hope to become king. But Tziva made up this story, and Tziva convinced David to some extent. It's an argument in the Talmud. The Talmud does debate this. And the Talmud says that there are two opinions if David actually believed what Siva said. Let me read the next two verses, and or the next verse, and you could see the two ways of reading it. The king then said to Siva, after Siva told him this, "Behold, everything that Mephibosheth owns is now yours." And Siva said, "I prostrate myself, may I find favor in the eyes of my lord the king." So, on a simple reading, sounds like David believed this story. And he, to the extent that he decided to give Siva anything that Mephibosheth owns. And a king has the right to do that. And so here, the king is basically believing this, what we would call lashon hara, gossip. And it's not only gossip, it's not true. It's mighty shemra. It's not even a true gossip. It's a lie. But David believed it, and basically he tells Siva that everything that Mephibosheth owns is now being given to you. And Siva is all happy, and he prostrates himself, and he says, "May I find favor in the eyes of my lord the king." But there is another opinion. The other opinion is that David HaMelech is saying, if this is true, then everything that Mephibosheth owns is now yours. I'm not believing it, but I'm allowed to suspect it. And if it's true what you're saying, then everything of Mephibosheth owns is now yours. And Siva said, I prostrate myself. May I find favor in the eyes of my lord the king, meaning in the future. And the reason why he uses the future, according to this view, is to tell us, it uses the future term to tell us that it was done on condition. It was conditional. The king did not believe the lashon hara, the gossip. The king was saying conditionally, if that's true, then you deserve all his stuff. And if it's not true, then you don't deserve it. And so it was on a condition that it's true. And we have yet to see if this is true or not. We're going to have to wait a little to find out the real story. But you all know already that it's not true. But we to read it inside, it's not for another few chapters. But the two opinions are brought in the Talmud, and the question really is, why did David accept this gossip? If it's true that he accepted it, why would he have accepted it? And the understanding is that he was so tired and overwhelmed from the journey of and the emotional stress that person would go through from having his son, wreak such havoc on his life, and put him in such a state of uncertainty. I guess it's not surprising that he wasn't fully capable of making the right decision, or not to believe it, and instead he believed it according to that view. And the other view says no, David did not believe it. This was done. This was on a condition. It's conditional. If it's true, then you'll have his stuff, and if not, not. So that's the proof that it's conditional is the fact that he uses the future future tense. When Siva says, "May I find favor in the eyes of my lord the king." Now, if it wasn't conditional, according to this, he should have used the past tense. "I have found favor in the eyes of my lord the king." That would have made more sense if David really believed it. The past tense would actually fit better. So that's the proof that one view has, that it means the future tense. On the other hand, the wording from the previous sentence, "everything that Mephibosheth owns is now yours," sounds pretty absolute. It doesn't sound like it's conditional. So you have both ways of learning this. Well, the beginning part sounds more like it's not conditional. The end part sounds like it is conditional. So it's a little unclear, and you have two opinions in the Talmud. Now, the next part of the story talks about someone by the name of Shimei. Shimei was the head of the Sanhedrin. Now, in order to understand what Shimei is up to over here, you have to understand how the Jewish people are looking at their political life. At the generation, the last generation of politics in their within the Jewish community, and they are it's really been a very challenging time. They were the ones who brought a leader, a king, into the picture, because before Shaul there was no king. There were shoftim, some type of leaders, but it wasn't really a full-fledged king. With Shaul, they did have some challenges, and that was Shaul. He had some issues with not humbling himself properly before Hashem, and not listening exactly to the words of Hashem. David, we find maybe did that better. Shaul ran after David. There were constant, it seemed to have, seemed to be a major paranoia issue over there with David and Shaul. And Shaul had what we call the ruach ra'ah, some bad spirit that affected him and caused him, which on a medical level you would call paranoia, but in the book of prophets it's considered more of some spiritual type of a sickness that. But in any event, however you see it, it hasn't been so smooth. I mean, we have David HaMelech. As humble as he was, we do find a number of issues with him. We have the issue of Bathsheba, and the issue of Amnon raping Tamar. There definitely have been some issues that have caused question. We're not sure what to believe. Or maybe they were pretty convinced, and then came this rebellion. So, the question is, or the understanding is that every time some major challenge comes up, it sort of knocks us off our assumptions. We were assuming King David is great. Okay, then we had Bathsheba issue. We went back to norm. We still trust David, right? We tried to. He must have done great. He repented, yeah. But then something else knocks it off. Then we start thinking again. Maybe David is not as righteous as we thought. And then, maybe time heals that. But then and now we have this rebellion from Avshalom. And this is truly knocking everyone off their rockers and starting to question. I shouldn't say everyone, but we have the head of the Sanhedrin, who is a top-notch individual. He is questioning King David, and he became convinced that David HaMelech is a fraud. And I must say, it's a very hard thing to have a leadership position like David had. I mean, you don't know how to judge. How does the world? There are certain mistakes that people make, or things that they did, and the question is, did they do them intentionally? Did they do them by mistake? Did Hashem force them into it? So this is the issue with Bathsheba, which involved murdering Bathsheba's husband, having relations with Bathsheba. The fact that Tamar was raped, the fact that Avshalom killed Amnon, and the fact that I should mention two more things. What about the fact that Avner was killed by Yoav, his own David's nephew killed Avner? That means that David was just taking advantage of the kingdom, and maybe he killed. Now we know that David did not want Avner to be killed, but it was a little vague. It was a little unclear. David made a whole, eulogy for him and so on. But did he really? Did he really? Are we 100% sure? So, at the time we wanted to believe that, But when things get knocked off their regular, the regular assumptions, then the whole thing becomes a little gray, and that's where Shimei comes in and says, "This is crazy. He's a murderer. He's evil, and he's going to curse David here." And that's what we're going to see here. And the truth of the matter is, we know that David was very righteous all along. But not only was it a story of Avner, then the other story of Ishbaishas. When David started a number of chapters earlier, we had the other king. The first 7 years that David, for 2 of the years, Ishbaishas was running competition, and David was just sort of like the king in Hebron. And 2 of those years, Ishbaishas seems to have been leading the rest of the Jewish people, or to some extent at least. And there was a division between the 2 groups, the 2 Jewish groups, and Ishbaishas ended up being murdered. The question is, was David behind that? And so again, you have these issues where we wanted to believe that David was righteous, but now when another story comes up, now again, here is Shimei starting to question things. Yes, Ben.
I wanted to say that David is giving Tziva whatever he's promising him, because right now I'm on the run. I can't check anything. He's bringing me food. I thank him for it. We'll see later what happens. But I also want to say we just learned about Avishai ben Tzruya.
Right. He's going to come up here in the morning.
He was the only one that got killed.
Right.
And that he's better than the head of Sanhedrin. And there's the head of Sanhedrin here too.
Not better than the head. He's better. He's equal or better than the majority of the Sanhedrin.
Oh, I thought then the whole Sanhedrin.
No, better than the majority. So it's
majority. Okay.
Give us such clarity,
But here comes up the head of Sanhedrin, Shimei.
Right. So anyway, but they're both arguing here. Now we do know that this Avishai was the nephew of David HaMelech, and we'll soon see him over here as well. And he's obviously a top-notch commander of David. So let's see 5. King David. Now I have to tell you, I'm on the phone here with the Zoom is on my phone, not on my computer, so I don't see if your hands are up always. So if I don't call on you, feel free to just interrupt me. So we're in verse 5, chapter 16, verse 5. King David came until Bahurim, and this is a certain area. And behold, a man of Shaul's family was coming out from there. His name was Shimei, the son of Gera, and he was cursing as he was coming out. So Shimei ben Gera is now cursing King David. And he is from the family of Shaul. So obviously he also has a little chip on his shoulder, maybe some, obviously he's not the most comfortable with David being king, and it probably brings up bad, negative feelings of his relative Shaul, negative feelings of how his relative Shaul lost, how he's sad that it was lost from his family, the kingship. So, yes.
Rabbi, just wondering if it's possible. Oh, wait a second, I'm hearing myself twice. Okay. Hear me now?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. So I'm just wondering if it's possible, if there's some kind of a chart that's printed, share with us, like you can email to the group that has like the who's who of major players.
Of what?
Of the major players in this whole story, to be able to keep track of, Avishai and this one and that one. It's like so many people, and it's easy to follow if you had some kind of a chart that says this one's uncle, this one's the grandson, and this one's the general, because the names go in and out so many times, you sort of lose track of who everybody is and what's their relationship. I don't know if you ever saw such a chart like this, but if you do come across something, it would be helpful to email or send or share.
I will try to make one up because I don't know if there is one. I'll try to make one up for next session. But best thing would be, David, if you remind me sometime in the end of the week, so that when I get back to Florida, I won't forget. So, but I'll try to make a little chart and maybe even send it out. And I'm saying maybe send it out before the end of the week, if possible. And this way we'll have it next Sunday for the class. I should mention, while you mentioned about a chart, that we are running a very special program on Thursdays for 4 Thursdays in December. And this is a expert in Jewish history who has put together a course called Jewish History in a Flash. And he teaches a crash course in Jewish history. And I've hired his services for our group on every Thursday, which is Rabbi Citron is going to be teaching on Tuesdays. And so his name is Rabbi Halibard. He's going to be teaching this course on 4 Thursdays. And I'm opening it up if you know of anyone that might be interested. It's a special course, and really it does cost $72 if anyone wants to join from the outside. Of course, for all of you, it's free. But if anyone wants to join from the outside,
be in the morning or afternoon?
No, it's part of our 3 o'clock class. It's part of the 3 to 4, the 3 o'clock class. And if you want to invite anyone to come, we do have some scholarships available. So if someone you think someone wants to come and maybe they can't afford it or whatever, or they don't feel like paying, we have some scholarships available, but it's officially at $72. They should sign up. It's on our website, jewishsenioracademy.com, and they could sign up or they could call me. And we'd like to, give a crash course in Jewish history. So it's from the first Thursday in December, first, second, third Thursdays, and then we're skipping for Hanukkah and the week after Hanukkah as well. So that'll be the 4 classes, a crash course in Jewish history.
Which rabbi are we missing out on when this happens?
The guest speaker. That's
okay.
That'll be, instead of a guest speaker, he will be our guest speaker for 4 weeks.
Perfect fit.
Made it easy for me. I don't have to find a guest speaker for 4 weeks.
Maybe he has a chart that I'm talking about.
And he has a chart. Yeah. So when you mentioned chart, it made me remember this, that I wanted to announce it, because I would like all of you to think about anyone that might want to get a crash course in Jewish history. It's unbelievable in 4 hours to get like a rundown of the entire Jewish history, to give you the perspective, keep things in perspective, because a lot of people, it's all vague and unclear. And this will give people hopefully give everyone a lot of clarity that they will be able to use for the rest of your lives. So that's in December. Anyway, bottom line is I'm going to try to put together a little a chart for this and make it a little easier. Thank you, David, for encouraging that.
And flyer with all of the dates and a link to your website, because I know I have a bunch of friends who might be very interested. That's if you would put all this information in one email, I will just...
Yeah. I'm going to send out an email. I have the flyer even. I'm going to send it out to everyone. Yeah. And we'll that would be great. Yeah, for sure.
Just wanted to say about this, how do you pronounce it? Shimei, to be a part of Sanhedrin is definitely create a very different personality. It's people who usually try to investigate facts because their decision is very serious. They have to come to the conclusion who is right and who is wrong. That's why it could be not only his personal feelings because it's part of his family, but it's his professional field also could probably create this kind of curiosity, how it happened and why. That's why knowing attorneys usually not curious people, but people who based on facts. He was probably looking for more details. That's what I think.
Very good point. Very good point, Anna. Very powerful point that, when do we draw the line between, the fact that he does have his personal interests, and how does he know when to draw that line and be able to judge in a manner that's not prejudiced and totally able to really look into the facts and judge with a pure, discerning mind, and not based on his own interests or feelings or connections. And it is shocking, and it's a very good question. It is very shocking that Shimei, the head of the Sanhedrin, would even make a statement like this, say things like this, if he's not 100%, he didn't definitely have his research done, especially because we know the truth. We're way well afterwards. We know the facts now, but it definitely a very good question. I really am happy you brought that up, because it's a powerful question. And even though I can't really answer it because it's a question that sort of tells us that that's the challenge, that there is such a challenge even among judges, that even among the greatest judges, they have to know, are they really capable of judging the people in a fair way? Because they very often they know both parties. Very often they've had a relationship with both parties. So what makes them be able to say, I will not be prejudiced towards one side? In other words, it is a serious issue that judges do have to, it's not automatic. It's not because they're the type of person that's pure. Every person is subject to this problem. And that's, I think, the message here, that as holy and righteous as you are, you have to always try to be extra careful. In a case where you might have a connection to a certain case, you have to say, I'm not taking this case because it wouldn't be right. I have, a certain leanings towards a certain side because of a personal gain or personal interest, personal friend. And a judge needs to sometimes admit that. And so I think that's where, now this is this is not a case of in court. So you have to also take that into consideration, Anna, that this case did not come up in court here. He's just he's giving he's venting his curses on David, not in a judicial setting, in a personal setting, screaming out the window, he's doing this in a personal way, not in his position. And because of that, I think it also allowed him to not use his typical method of being extremely honest and research the story. I mean, he does know David very well. He has been following along the story for many years. He has seen a lot of issues over the years, obviously. It has bothered him inside numerous times. He has questioned certain things. And now, this is not surprising, even though he's a member of the Sanhedrin, he's the head of the Sanhedrin, that he might just blow up over here. And he's basically blowing up on David. Now,
he's blowing up because David is now down. He wouldn't do it when David was up as a king.
Well, the way I see it, the way my understanding of it is that the reason why he's doing it is not because David is down. In other words, it's not that it's easy for him to do because David is down. It's because David being down is a proof that David deserves to be down. You know what I mean? It's like, this is the proof. It's like proof.
So he's adding to it.
It's just added another push to that side of the scale. In other words, he always had this scale in front of his eyes. Is David good? David not? And now just added a whole proof that David is his sins are really too much. Now, and again, this is obviously not the correct way of understanding of seeing David, but this is how he saw David at this time. Now we're in verse 5. King David came until Bahurim, and behold, a man of Shaul's family was coming out from there. His name was Shimei, the son of Gera, and he was cursing as he was coming out. He pelted David and all of King David's servants with stones, as well as all the people and the soldiers to his right and to the left. So the verse continues and says, and this is what Shimei said as he cursed, go out, you man of bloodshed, you base man. And man of bloodshed is probably connected to killing Avner, killing Ishbosheth, and he continues, you base man, meaning probably connected to the fact that he took Bathsheba. Hashem is repaying you for all the blood of the house of Shaul, in whose stead you have reigned, and has given over the kingdom into the hand of Avshalom, your son. Behold, you are now afflicted because you are a man of bloodshed. So he's going on and making David into this murderer, making David out into as if he's a murderer. One of the commentaries does mention an interesting thing. He says that Shimei also thinks that it's David's fault that that Shimei's relative Shaul killed out the Kohanim in Nov, because David had been there in Nov, and because of David's story with Nov, Shaul got all angry at the Nov Kohanim, and he killed out the entire group of Kohanim, including the Kohen Gadol, and which was a terrible, terrible sin, and a terrible tragedy, I should say. Besides sin, killing one person would be a terrible crime, terrible tragedy. But this was a horrific and really a magnitude above and beyond imagination, killing out the city of Nov, and of course Shimei is, once he's putting all this blame on David, he's throwing that blame as if that's David's fault also. The killing out of Nov, the city of the Kohanim, all because David was sort of like involved with them, and he took stuff from them, and that caused Shaul to be angry. So Shimei is seeing this as if it's David's fault. At least that's one of the commentaries brings that up, as one of the later commentaries wants to say that, adds that to the equation. It's not it's an interesting addition to what we already understand here. Now,
Rabbi,
yes.
who was the prophet at this time, and was he involved in any of this back and forth?
Nathan.
So you have Nasan and you have God, and we don't really, we don't really have such clarity as to, the story, these as the prop.
Rabbi?
But we do have, David did get some type of an answer from the Urim V'Tumim, which is the coat of the Kohen Gadol, that it did answer to him that he will yet, that he will be able to return, at least, well, we don't know what it answered him actually. And one of the commentaries believes that it was, will you return to Jerusalem? And it was yes. So according to that, there was some type of a knowledge from this Urim V'Tumim. But we also do know that Nasan had told him way back that you will have suffering from within. He knew that he was going to have this type of, you're going to have some major issues. And, he understands this as if it's a cleansing for David sees it as a cleansing for all of any sins that he might have. Yes, Moshe.
I mean, from all this, it seems to me that there is a lesson to be learned about leadership in our history that we really shouldn't have it. In other words, we should have Navaim and Kohanim and people that are not kings, the Melechs. I mean, it just seems to me that this is the lesson to be learned from this, all this, because Shaul and David HaMelech and there's always been problems, and even with Shlomo, there's with the horses and his stables that he had and so forth. It just seems that there's a lot of averot that are committed by the kingship. You know what I'm saying? It seems like we're that this has there's a lesson to be learned that we are not. We're going in it's a direction that's going to reverse itself. Either, that's going to be the case, or there's going to be continuation. I mean, even right now to this day, we have prime ministers that are leading everything, but they really are replaced by the kingship in some way, But you see, there's mistakes that are made,
Well,
Am I
in
correct?
general, anyone that has, arrogance, it goes up, anyone that's successful, sometimes it goes into their head and they become, a little crazy.
So what I'm asking is that what is this leading to? That we should continue on this path of having kings? We should have a king or a leader or we should have more of a spiritual leadership, like the Novaim, Eli and Shmuel, or even something that supersedes that even,
Well, this is the thing. I mean, we're not really, we sort of dealt with this issue when they asked for Shaul to be king, and they asked too early. They wanted some type of a king comparable to the Goyim, that would lead them. They wanted things to be done more naturally, and Hashem wanted things to be done more miraculously, and therefore. And the king was, would have been, as you said, a little more on the spiritual levels and inspiring the people more. But God really was not ready to have a king. And again, because he wanted to win the wars in a more miraculous way rather than have an official army. And would have been maybe a bigger Kiddush Hashem for sure if the wars were won in a more miraculous way than with a king and everything like that. But at the same time, there is a mitzvah to have a king, which as you're saying would be connected more to the spiritual. But this is not really necessarily connected to right here. It's more connected to the beginning of Shaul being king. Again, we know that David was not wrong with anything that he did. And so it's not like he's doing it's not like David is doing anything wrong, so you have to always remember that this issue that you're bringing up really is it's really connected to earlier on with Shaul and with the situation of the people, not really how bad the king is, but more about the people being not on the level where they should be. People should have been interested in letting Hashem show us his miracles, as he did with the city of Jericho and so on, and in many wars, and instead of relying on the nature and making us like every other nation, and which is not true. We are not like every other nation. Okay, so anyway, let me get back to where we are over here, and so we were mentioning that the Shimei was pelting everyone with stones, and verse 7. We said about how he was calling David a murderer, a bloodshed, base man, and there's a medrash that says that Shimei was also emphasizing how wrong it was for David to keep Bathsheba as a wife even after he had sinned with her, and the death of Uriah. Maybe he should have divorced her, or stayed away. There are different laws about person has an affair, he's not allowed to marry that person. And anyway, so this is these are some of the claims that Shimei has against David. Again, as we know, David is extremely righteous, but there's always gray when you can see, if you want to question things, there's always ways of questioning. There's always ways of questioning things. And so the next verse tells us I think we're up to 8. Hashem is repaying you for all the blood of the house of Shaul, and whose stead you. No, I did that already. Avishai, verse 9. Avishai, son of Truya, said to the king, "Why should this dead dog curse my lord, the king? I will go on ahead and take off his head." So Avishai wants to just kill Shimei because he's acting disrespectfully. And David, but the king, in verse 10, but the king said, "What does it matter to me or to you, O sons of Truya? So shall he curse, for Hashem has said to him, curse David." Who can then say, why have you done this? So David says, why should we blame him for cursing me? Hashem gave him and put it in his mind that he should curse me. And that's what's meant. And why should we bother him? Especially because what does it matter to me or to you? And what that means is that you don't just kill people because they say something. We're not just killing enemies here. We're not, people can have anger, people can have this. We don't just go around killing them. And Avishai, who's the nephew of David, because his Tzeruya is David's sister, and this is Avishai, the son of Tzeruya. We just learned a little about him in the morning class, where later on we find that there was a punishment that ended up happening to the Jewish people, and Avishai passed away from that plague. And that had to do with counting the Jewish people, that David was not meant to count the Jewish people, and because he counted them, so Avishai died. But here we are learning about, here we're earlier on in Avishai's life, and Avishai, who seems to be a big a commander or officer, he is offering the king to kill this person who's rebelling against the king. And
Rabbi,
yes,
this verse where it says that David is saying Hashem said to him, curse David. So who can say anything? So isn't this the verse that's discussed in Tanya?
yeah, it is. Yeah, good point. So I was going to mention that the Rashi over here says, did Hashem really tell this Shimei to curse David? I mean, so Rashi over here learns that is it possible that the head of the Sanhedrin would curse the king if Hashem didn't tell him to? So Rashi understands it to be like he must have received some type of divine inspiration, divine revelation, the prophecy to curse David. That's the way Rashi seems to learn. And David understood that, there must have been some type of must be part of the punishment that I'm supposed to get. I have my rebellious son taking over, trying to take over the kingdom, and I have to receive this harsh rebuke from Shimei. The Radak says that it's as if Hashem said to curse David, because Hashem put me through this situation, so it's only normal that Shimei is going to curse me. So Hashem told him to curse me. Doesn't mean he said physically, go curse David. It means Hashem put me through this, and everything together is automatically going to cause Shimei to utter words of curse to me. That's his first interpretation. He gives another interpretation that that Hashem awakened his spirit to embarrass me as a punishment. So the point here is that Rashi seems to learn it's more, I mean, he doesn't say clearly that it's a prophecy, but it sounds like it's more of a prophecy. The Radak seems to understand it to be either that Hashem just put me through this, so it's natural that, you know, I'm going to have some big hitters. They're gonna curse me, or because Hashem put me through this situation with all, you know, in the Talmudic language, there's a term called raglayim ladavar. Raglayim ladavar means that if you sin once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, chances are the 6th time is also a sin. You know, there's too many questionable things that add up. You know, if it was just 1, I would say maybe it's nothing. 2, you know, but when you have all these matters adding up, it's sort of like it's considered like that's probable that it's, you know, it's raglayim ladavar. This is not a one-time thing that we can we might have misjudged, and maybe we should give him the benefit of the doubt. You see it too often. It's called raglayim ladavar. It's there's legs to the matter. This is not a surprise, you know, an off the you know, a one-time thing. Yes.
The old American saying that you don't have a leg to stand on comes from this also. The whole idea of raglayim.
Interesting. No. So you would say that term if someone did something a number of times, you would say you don't have a leg to stand on. Is that when it's used? Like when
against it, right? It has legs. The story has legs. They use that term in journalism also.
Okay, so it's based on the Gemara. That's good. Thank you, David, Isaac. So the understanding here is that Hashem put me through this, and it's like Hashem told him to curse me. And the second explanation was like Hashem made him feel this way, that he cursed me. Now, in Tanya brings an interesting point, and that is that if someone curses someone or someone does something to someone else, it basically is Hashem telling them to do that. And that sort of fits with the second shot of the Radak, that it's Hashem caused me to think this way. Hashem caused me to want to do this. Now, that's not an excuse, because Hashem didn't force me to actually do it, but he put it in my mind because he wants you to get punished. And I actually went forward and went ahead with this, and I did it. But the point is that, for example, let's say I scream at someone and they don't deserve it. So they don't, you know, it was wrong. I wasn't really correct in my screaming. They obviously deserve to get screamed at for some other reason. So I claim they stole my coat, right? And really, they didn't steal my coat. So I screamed at them. Now, if they got screamed at, that means that Hashem told me to scream at them. They deserve to get screamed at. They don't get nothing, you know, nothing happens with no reason. They deserved it for whatever reason. It was an atonement for some other sin, something else they did, but they didn't steal my coat, but they nevertheless got screamed at. And it was basically me, because that's the idea of hashgacha pratis, divine power. Hashem arranges everything, that's what is, you know, that person gets what's meant for them. So if Shimei ended up cursing David, it was basically Hashem telling him to curse David, because David was meant to be cursed at this time, and he wouldn't have gotten it if not for Hashem telling him to do it. Now, obviously, Shimei had free will not to do it, but the fact that he chose to do it was basically from Hashem, And so here we have Avishai wants to kill Shimi ben Gera, and David is telling him that this is not this is no reason. We don't have to kill him. We don't need to kill him. Why should we do that? And it doesn't really hurt me if he says these curses. It's not bothering me. Now, the truth of the matter is, there is a concept of rebelling against the king. And the question really is, why did David not want to kill him? He is rebelling against the king, and someone who is moired b'malchus is punishable by death. So theoretically, Avishai, logically, Avishai was not wrong for saying maybe we should kill him. He was disrespectful to the king, and that is deserving of the death penalty. Now, the king can forgive such a person, but why? What is the reason? And this might take us back to something I mentioned earlier. At least according to one way of looking at this, is that David is not sure at this point that he really is considered a king. And maybe he's not considered a king at this point, and therefore he doesn't want to kill someone based on the fact that the other person was disrespectful and rebellious against him, because maybe he is not in the category of being king, being that Avshalom is sort of like taking over, and maybe Hashem has taken away some level of the kingdom from him, and he doesn't, maybe he shouldn't halachically be considered king. I mean, at least in his thought, that maybe there is such a thought. That's just one idea. Another idea is that David, has always shown, some respect to Shaul. As much as Shaul wanted to kill David, David did not want, Shaul's family to be murdered. David did not go after them. And here again, we see this again, where David has every right. He could have killed Shaul. He could have killed others from Shaul's family, even Ishbaishas, and who was the competition to him during his first 7 years of reigning in Hebron. And David did not do that. David acted. He went beyond the letter of the law, it seems, and he didn't do so. I'm offering you two thoughts about this, why he's not going and killing this person who's cursing him, Shimi ben Gera, who is from Shaul's family. Okay, anyway, we're going to stop here. I want to wish you a good evening, and Mr. Hashem, sei gesund. Okay, take care.
Thank you, Rebbe.
Thank
Have
you,
a safe
Rabbi.
trip back.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Amen.
Good, everybody.
Take care.